On April 16, 1947, an explosion happened at the Amoco oil refinery. The explosion happened on the USS Grankamp, which was filled with ammonium nitrate. Many longshoremen came out extinguishing the fire, but proved futile, and this disaster would cause the deaths of many people. After the Second World War, France were rebuilding their country. The United States gave France ships to rebuild their country. One of these ships being the Grankamp, a cargo ship that was given to France by the United States. The ship was assigned by the US to the French line to assist in the rebuilding of France, along with other efforts in Europe, along with the ammonium nitrate, a very common cargo on the high seas. On Wednesday, April 16, 1947, around AM, smoke was spotted in the cargo hold of Grankamp while she was still moored. Longshoremen used a gallon jug of water and 2 fire extinguishers, but they had no effect and the cargo hold filled with smoke. The longshoremen were then ordered to leave. At this point, the captain of Grankamp ordered that no water be used, lest the cargo be ruined. Instead, he ordered all hatches sealed and the hold to be filled with steam in an attempt to smother the fire. This was unlikely to be effective, as ammonium nitrate is an oxidizer, thus neutralizing the extinguishing properties of steam. The steam may have contributed to the fire by converting the ammonium nitrate to nitrous oxide, while augmenting the already intense heat in the ship's hold. Around 8:30, the steam pressure became so great that it blew up the hatches. The ammonium nitrate reached an explosive threshold from the combination of heat and pressure. Grankamp detonated, causing utter destruction within 2,000 feet and extreme damage throughout the port. The tremendous blast produced a 15 feet fall, 6 tsunami and a shockwave, leveling nearly 1,000 buildings on land. Among the buildings destroyed was a Monsanto chemical company plant, killing 145 of its 450 workers. Flying shrapnel resulted in ignition of refineries and chemical tanks along the waterfront. Falling bales of burning twine from Grankamp's cargo added to the damage, and her anchor was held across the city. 2 sightseeing airplanes flying nearby were blown out of the sky, while 10 miles 16 kilometers away, half of the windows in Galveston were shattered. The explosion blew the almost 6,350 short tons 760T of the ship still into the air, some at supersonic speed. Official casualty estimates came to a total of 567, including all the crewmen who remained aboard Grankamp. All but one member of the 28-man Texas City Volunteer Fire Department were killed in the initial explosion on the docks while fighting the ship on fire. With fires raging throughout Texas City, first responders from other areas were initially unable to reach the site of the disaster. But unfortunately, things will get worse. A lot worse than they think. The first explosion had set Highflyer free from its moorings, and it had drifted across the harbor, coming to rest against SS Wilson BN Key. Her crew stayed aboard for an hour before the smoke of the burning oil in the harbor forced them to leave. In the afternoon, 2 men boarded Highflyer searching for injured crew members. They noted that her cargo was ablaze and reported it to someone on the harbor front. This message seems to have gone unheeded for several hours until it was realized that this indicated a serious problem. Only around PM did Tugboat S attempt to pull Highflyer away from the docks. Despite having cut her anchor, they were unable to move her. They fled the area around AM the next day, April 17. 10 minutes later, at 1:10 AM, Highflyer exploded, killing 2 more people. According to witnesses, the explosion was more powerful than that of Grankamp. Casualties were light since the docks had already been evacuated, but the second explosion exacerbated the damage to nearby ships and buildings. The blast destroyed the nearby Wilson BN Key. The steel frame of Highflyer had been heated until blowing, and these chunks rained down upon Texas City, setting mass fires. One of the propeller S was blown off and subsequently found nearly a mile inland. It is now in a memorial park near the anchor of Grankamp. The Texas City disaster is generally considered the worst industrial accident in US history. Witnesses compared the scene to the fairly recent images of the 1943 air raid on Bari and the much larger devastation after an atomic bomb was dropped at Nagasaki. Of the dead, 405 were identified and 63 have never been identified. The latter remains were placed in a memorial cemetery in the north part of Texas City near Moses Lake. An additional 113 people were classified as missing, for no identifiable parts were ever found. This figure includes firefighters who were aboard Grankamp when she exploded. There is some speculation that there were hundreds more killed but uncounted, including visiting seamen, undocumented laborers and their families, and an untold number of travelers. More than 800 people were left orphaned or widowed. However, there were also some survivors among people as close as 70 feet 21 m from the dock. The victims' bodies quickly filled the local morgue. Several bodies were laid out in the local high school's gymnasium for identification by family or friends. The cause of the initial fire on board Grankamp was never determined. It may have been started by a cigarette discarded the previous day, meaning the ship's cargo had been smoldering throughout the night when the fire was discovered on the morning of the explosion. Historian Hugh Stevens later identified human error as the cause, and cites numerous reasons as to why a minor fire became such a severe incident. The disaster received national media attention, with offers of assistance coming from around the country. Several funds were established to handle donations, particularly the Texas City Relief Fund, created by the city's mayor Curtis Trahan.
One of the largest fundraising efforts for the city and the victims of the disaster was organized by Sam Macchio, one of the two brothers who ran organized crime in Galveston at the time. Macchio organized a scale benefit on the island, featuring entertainers, including Phil Herons, Frank Sinatra, and Ann Sheridan.
In the end, the Texas City Relief Fund raised more than $1 million, $5 million in today's terms. Payouts for fire insurance claims reached nearly $4 million, $54 million in today's terms. Many of the legal cases seeking compensation were combined into Elizabeth Dalehite, a.r. FIEC, United States, under the recently enacted Federal Tort Claims Act FDCA. On April 13, 1950, the District Court found the United States government responsible for a litany of negligent acts of omission and commission by 168 named agencies and their representatives in the manufacture, packaging, and labeling of ammonium nitrate. This was further compounded by errors in transport, storage, loading, fire prevention, and fire suppression, all of which led to the explosions and the subsequent carnage. On June 10, 1952, the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned this decision, finding that the United States maintained the right to exercise its own discretion in vital national matters. The U.S. Supreme Court affirmed that decision 346 U.S. 15, June 8, 1953, in a 4-3 opinion, noting that the District Court had no jurisdiction under the federal statute to find the government liable for negligent planning decisions, which were properly delegated to various departments and agencies. In short, the FDCA clearly exempts failure to exercise or perform a discretionary function or duty, and the court found that all of the alleged acts in this case were discretionary in nature. The Texas City disaster is surely a terrible disaster, but it has also had been repeated of history. In 2005, an explosion happened at the oil refinery, but although this is a different story for another time, the life lesson to learn from is be mindful of what you do. It can and will affect the future and everyone around you.